Hello, everybody, and welcome to this episode of Next Level Healing. I'm your host, Dr. Tara Perry. My guest today is an absolute superstar in a subject area that I've been long fascinated with. Masters in this area who I've known are absolute magicians. Joining me today is Sue Hitzmann. She is a founding member of the Fascia Research Society. She is a manual therapist, exercise physiologist, and a global expert in neurofascial science and research. She is best known as the creator of the MELT method, an innovative self-care practice that has revolutionized the approach to pain management and wellness. She is the New York Times bestselling author of the MELT method and its follow-up bestseller, Melt Performance. Her podcast, Anatomical Gangster, showcases innovators who help awaken others to a new approach to living a resilient life by deepening their connection to the human experience. She's been a repeat guest expert on national television programs, including Nightline, Regis and Kathy Lee, The Dr. Oz Show, Good Morning America, Home and Family, The Rachel Ray Show, and so many others. Sue's private MELT practice has served Major League Baseball and basketball stars, Hollywood A-listers, Olympic gold medalists. Through her in-person classes, streaming platform, and global instructor community of over 3,500 MELT practitioners, Sue has helped countless individuals overcome chronic pain and enhance their overall well-being. Wow.
When I hear somebody else
say that, you haven't done, Sue.
It really is so much of my life. I think to myself, gosh, it's amazing how many years transpire since the originating moments of the MELT method. It's like almost it's a little about like 27 years. It's a long time.
So fascia, having been in actually, I did craniosacral work with John Upledger a million years ago. So I've met some of these magicians that are just connected to this incredible tissue that's throughout all of our bodies called fascia. And I just want to read for our listeners what you have on your website. It sounds like Obi-Wan Kenobi describing the Force in Star Wars. It's this web-like substance that interpenetrates and supports muscles, bones, organs, cells, and nerves, and it plays a vital role in our overall movement, flexibility, and stability. And yet it also plays a crucial role in our mental well-being and our immune systems. I mean, this stuff is like magic living webs within our whole body. When did you start to discover how incredibly important this system was?
I think the real origin for me was when I suddenly had what I call sudden chronic pain. I woke up one day at the peak of my fitness career and the bottom of my foot hurt me. And I thought, I must have stepped on a piece of glass. I just had no idea what it was. And at first I kind of ignored it because it was just like a sudden thing. It didn't creep up. It was just, I woke up going, wow, my foot hurts me. And over the course of weeks and months, it didn't get better. It got worse. And then I'm, with a magnifying glass and a knife, I'm ready to cut open the bottom of my foot thinking there's got to be something in there. And after a number of months, I started going to doctors to try to figure out what it was. And the first diagnosis was plantar fasciitis. But it turned into this body-wide ache and fatigue and all this exhaustion. So I started going to specialists. And I had one specialist say it was depression and another specialist who told me that it might be lupus and they needed to run some blood tests. So at that point, I'm like 28 years old, crawling to the bathroom, thinking this is it, my life is over. And I just kept thinking plantar fasciitis, inflamed fascia. What is inflamed fascia? There's no exercise for that. How do you fix inflamed fascia? And luckily, Google became a thing in the late 90s. And so I started looking up fascia and I found researchers that were not only studying its effect on pain, but also the immune regulation and the longevity. And I got taken under the wing of Tom Findlay, who was actually the gentleman who started the Fascia Research Society. And I just never came back the same and discovered all of the deeper science of fascia on a cellular level rather than on a structural level. And I think it's completely changed my view of aging and longevity.
So what basically is your approach? Because inflammaging is, all the talk these days, and none of us want any of that. So how do we manage it? What is the key to your approach that's so different from what other people are doing?
Hey guys, studies are showing that 68% of people that watch podcasts regularly don't click the subscribe button. Do me a huge favor. If you like this content, click subscribe so other people know where to go for the cool stuff. Thank you.
Well, mostly Melt adopts a very gentle touch practice. You had mentioned cranial sacral therapy. So I went from the fitness industry to learning cranial sacral therapy, visceral manipulation, and all these light touch therapeutic techniques. And I went from working on high performance athletes to people who had emotional trauma. And sure enough, it didn't matter where your pain originated, that fascia was actually a link to the healing process. So I take a very light touch therapeutic technique. I'm very fascinated with the superficial fascia, which is where your adipose tissue is, where the fatty layer is. And there are just millions of sensory nerves, more sensory nerves living in fascia than there are your muscles. And there's hormones and metabolism and metabolites in your superficial fascia. And as I started to teach people this more gentle, light touch therapeutic technique, I was finding my clients were getting better faster. They were coming back to my office after just a few sessions, looking better, feeling better, moving better. And I just knew I had something. So after working on clients for about 7 years in a private practice where my private practice exploded with new people, I coined the term Melt, and I started to teach this in group environments because I thought maybe I could keep people out of my office entirely and save people money and time by educating them on how to catch pre-pain signals before they have pain and then never walk down that road of pain problems.
So fascia literally is this web-like tissue that connects everything within our bodies. And it has an innate intelligence, doesn't it? I mean, when we can connect to it in a way that it understands and we can communicate with it, it will kind of perform in a way that's more optimal for us. Can you explain how that process works?
Sure. So first of all, like the research, I mean, people even say that your body holds trauma. That you hold trauma in your fascia. And I'm like, well, how does that work? So first of all, fascia is a neuroelectrochemical system. There are, again, sensory nerves living in fascia that are relying on this fascial matrix. And fascia is primarily comprised of collagen, and collagen kind of acts like a semiconductor. So it's actually transferring frequency and vibration through the matrix anywhere. So if we have a pain point, oftentimes there's fascial restrictions that are far away from the area where we have pain, that if you can start to identify where these links are and treat the links and sort of uncross the linkage, you can decrease the unnecessary tension compression management in this tissue and rejuvenate the fluid perfusion of fascia. So what most people would call that are adhesions. And I just say it's kind of, I call it stuck stress, and where stuck stress loves to accumulate in the body is in our spaces. So our joints, our low back, our neck, places where there's not a lot of muscle, but there's more fibrous connective tissue, that tends to be where cellular dehydration exists. And as the extracellular matrix, the fluid outside of our cells, decreases in fluid abundance and fluid motion, that alters cell-to-cell communication. This can decrease metabolism. It slows down our hormonal regulation. And it is one of the key factors that leads to not only pain, but a lot of the symptoms that we associate with aging.
So it's one thing to go to a practitioner who's incredibly skilled at this, have them put their hands on you. And I've experienced this with some people that are just, again, they're freaking magicians.
Yeah.
And they're rare. And it feels like they can solve anything. Having been in acupuncture practice for so many years in Southern California, people would say, how did you know that was there? And it's like an ability that you learn over time. It's like you're learning to play an invisible piano or learn an invisible language. How does somebody begin the journey of doing this on their own? Because you have tools on your website where somebody that doesn't have a background in this can go and start learning about it. What would you say are some of the keys? Because again, to most people, this is such a foreign language. It's such a foreign activity. It's such a foreign way of interacting with one's own body. Where does one get started?
Well, first, I want to acknowledge that, it is really incredible when you can find a hands-on practitioner. There's really no substitution for that, because when you're a good practitioner, you spend a lot of time just assessing somebody and watching them and listening to them, and then using your hands to palpate rather than manipulate, to sort of feel and follow what's going on rather than initiating change, that you're following the natural pathways of the body. And that is a skill. And when I was working on my clients, especially people who had fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue, they were very fearful to engage in a self-care practice because they thought that they were going to make it worse, because when they did exercise or things like that, they would crash. And that really got me into thinking, in a client of mine who had a lot of trauma, she was the one who said to me, if you could just invent a way for me to do to myself what you do with your magic hands, I'd stay out of your office. And that was where I was like, I'd be unemployed. That sounds like a good idea, though. I wonder what that would be. But with those types of clients, it was a client of mine where I was working on her, and she said, how can you feel like, what is it that you're feeling? And I said, it's sort of unnecessary tension along the spine that's giving your body a held resistance to just relaxing. And she said, can I feel that? And I thought, lie down on the floor. Let me see if I can explain it. And what I've identified, and this is one of the 4 R's of melt. Melt is basically a recipe for eliminating stuck stress in fascia. So reconnect is the first R of melt. Rebalance is the second. Rehydrate is the third. And release is the fourth. So the reconnect is assessment. And so what I get people to do is to identify where stuck stress is living in their bodies before they have pain, or if they have pain. What this does is it gives them an interruption to veer their mind away from the pain points and what actually might be causing the pain to exist in the first place. And there are really 4 common imbalances that many people possess along the spine that are left unaddressed from day to day. And the 4 that I try to point out to people are the ones that compress the neck and the low back the most and destabilize what I call the neurocore reflexes. So those innate core reflexes that engage with the diaphragmatic motion and your autonomic nervous system's ability to stabilize your spine. And the fascinating thing is that people can feel these imbalances and then they treat them. And then when we come off the roller and they reassess, I say, what do you feel? And they're like, it's all gone. And I said, so you're doing the practice right. So if you keep doing that, it's kind of like taking an anti-inflammatory. After a while, your body will reset closer to that baseline than where you started. And that really is, I think, the starting place, is attuning people to their bodies, building the awareness that this accumulative tension in fascia is something you can sense and feel, and you can eliminate it from day to day so it doesn't accumulate and cause pain over time.
Why are we all so inflamed? We think a lot about inflammation in terms of being our diets, but what are the biggest mistakes that most of us are making? I would guess a lot of it is postural. A lot of people are sitting in front of computers all the time. There's the saying that sitting is the new smoking, but also being in the mind-body connection business as long as I have, our thoughts play a huge role. So what are like the biggest keys to addressing inflammation in our lives?
Okay, so this is what I would explain it as, is your autonomic nervous system is the innate aspect of your body that is supporting, protecting, stabilizing you without your voluntary control or conscious awareness. And housed underneath this monitor, you have 3 regulators called the sympathetic, parasympathetic, and enteric nervous system. The sympathetic nervous system is your stress regulator. Parasympathetic is your rest regulator. And the enteric nervous system is the gut regulator. And what's happening to the majority of people today is that we are actually always on a stress state. From the moment we wake up, life is stressful. From the moment we wake up, people get up, they open up their phones, they're scrolling away, they're making their coffee, they're getting jacked up on caffeine, and then they're going right to work, sitting down and working. And then they are not really in love with the people that they're around. They're angry at people. They're frustrated in their cars. Their dog pooped on their carpet. So the whole day is just stress, 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 stress. And I think what's happening to people is that we are actually overdriving our stress response from younger and younger and younger. So I'm seeing metabolic dysregulation in 20-year-olds that I've never seen before. But I think that the demand and the stress of daily living has gotten so high that the problem is at night, when you fall asleep and you go to sleep, that's where the repair regulator is actually autonomically coming back and sort of sloughing off all of the stress that you've accumulated in the day. But what are we doing before we go to bed? We get on our phone and we scroll and we scroll and we scroll. We're watching TV, we're watching the news, and then we go to bed. And we're not falling asleep easily. We're not staying asleep easily. And so what we're doing is we're waking up the next day with a backlog of stuck stress. And the problem with that is that your nervous system starts to think that that is the natural state of balance. Like that's as good as it's going to get. And if you stay in a state like this, the thing that it really affects is your enteric nervous system, the gut regulator. And once the gut regulator slows down, now you get gut inflammation, you get poor neurotransmission from body to brain, right? You've got most of your serotonin is produced in your gut that your brain's relying on. That's slowing down. And now stress is giving you more symptoms. Your eyes are always dry. Your skin starts to break out. Your belly is always bloated. You're constipated. You have anxiety, depression, etc. And the problem with all of these symptoms is that there's a pill for all of these things. So people, and especially in the medical field, we're very symptom driven. So we start chasing the symptom, but we're not really realizing that if we just took the 360-degree view and looked down and said, wow, actually the problem is that my stress regulator can't regulate. And what's profound about fascia is that if instead of trying to decrease the mind's stress, which is not very easy, right? Because when you're in a stress state, if somebody goes, yo, chill out, you might be like, listen, and get even more agitated, right? Like you don't even know. So what fascia does is it's an indirect way to treat the body through the fascia to help decrease and quell the stress response. So in a waking state, you're boosting the parasympathetic regulation so that you're not waiting for the nighttime to get you back here. And you're actively participating in boosting the repair processes to get the stress regulator to balance back out. And I think that's what we're missing are ways to do this. And that's where MELT incorporates mindful meditation and breathwork techniques, gentle compression, intentional techniques for touch and sensory reception, and to teach people how to traction tissue against the joints so that you're pulling fluid flow back into those primary spaces where all the stuck stress exists.
So I've long heard about the sympathetic and parasympathetic. I talk about that constantly. This third category that you talked about, I had always thought about the gut as sort of being part of the parasympathetic, but you have it in its own category. Can you explain where the science evolved on that?
Yeah, so Dr. Gershon is a profound researcher that back in the 70s and 80s started to look at the gut and saying it's actually its own nervous system. We're actually discovering other aspects of the nervous system when we're starting to coin things. And I want to remind everybody, there really is only one nervous system, right? But in anatomy, what we do is we cut it up so that we can understand it. And so I kind of look at the whole nervous system as being a family. So like the central nervous system and the peripheral nervous system are like a power couple that are actually working together in different roles, but they are the head of the household. But they're very busy, so they hire two more people. They hire a somatosensory nervous system to take in all the information from the outside world and an autonomic nervous system to take in all the inside world. So I think of that as like Sally, the assistant, is the somatosensory, and Annie is the nanny who's taking care of the three kids, Sam, Pam, and Ernie, sympathetic, parasympathetic, and enteric. And so if you think about it that way, these two twins, the sympathetic and parasympathetic, they need to balance one another. And again, when Sam, he's kind of the ADD kid, he's all over the place. If he's overpowering this Om Shanti child who kind of likes to clean the house at night, again, that tip scale is what causes the problem. And if Sam gets into Annie's room, she's going to make a message back up to Annie, the nanny, and you're going to get symptoms. But if Sam gets into Ernie's room and messes up Ernie's room. Ernie is like the brainiac kid. He's the one doing like a dissertation in physics. He's doing an addition on the house. He does his parents' taxes, gives them marital advice. Like he's actually controlling a lot more than your conscious mind or the peripheral nervous system. That inherent gut system is really the source, the heart, the gut, the brain. These are things that we're not consciously caring for. The enteric system has a huge leading role in all of that. So if Sam, the stress, is getting into Ernie's room, well, Ernie's not going to talk to Annie. He's not even going to talk to Pat, his mom. He's going to go to Charlie, the central nervous system. And now you've got migraines, tension, headaches, gut problems. You're going to the doctor. You might get colitis. Like it's a host of bigger dis-ease that happens. And I always think, again, as parents, if you don't go in and check the household, it's just a matter of time where you're off leading your life and you're not tuning into what's going on. You come back home and your house is burnt down. You've got tax evasion and you're getting a divorce. You know what I mean? So it's our job to realize that you can't rely on your DNA. You can't rely on your belief that you're doing okay because, you think you're one with the universe. That actually taking the time to actually physically, as a conscious agent, feel your body, be an observer in the process of observation of your body on the internal aspect, not what you see in the mirror, but what you feel inside your body. I think that if we don't learn how to do that, we become very despondent of the body. And when we have pain, we think, why is my body failing me? Why has my body done this to me again? And I think to myself, well, your body's just trying to get help. It's like,
because you weren't taking care of the household.
Yeah, sounding the alarm, like the fire. It's like when the fire alarm goes off because your toaster's on fire and you walk over to the fire alarm and take the batteries out. That's you taking a medication. You're not fixing the problem. And I think that's where that's what I've been able to awaken people to, is that it is actually easy to take 5 minutes and attune yourself to what your body feels like. And in that, you gain a lot of control and power back about what these innate senses of regulation are doing for you, not to you.
And you have a lot of interesting, simple tools that you walk people through how to use. Can you just describe? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. This is one. So we start everybody with soft tools. Like everybody has used a ball and most balls are very hard. You can see this is very squishy.
So she's got a squishy ball for those who are just audio only.
Yeah, it's about the size of like a little Kadima ball, a little paddle
like a racquetball.
Exactly, like a little smaller than a racquetball, but very soft and pliable. And we start anybody who has pain. I always start the very first place you should start are your hands and feet, because you've got so many sensory receptors in your
as an acupuncturist, those meridians all end at the fingertips, and especially those Jing Well points at the end, they're magic.
And we forget about that, right? I always say, for as much time as people take to make their butt look more lifted in their jeans, you would think they would spend 5 minutes a day just caring for the two most used parts of their body.
First, you get everybody's attention. I've seen your video where you actually use that squishy ball and a little hand massage to create a facelift. Hello.
Exactly. Well, and the tissue in your face is very reactive, and like there's so many points on the face that also are meridians to the rest of the body.
From the hand.
And so the
master point for the face, right on the hand.
Yeah, and this is our other tool, is the melt roller, and you see it's like, again, for you guys who are listening, it's very soft and pliable. So we adopt a gentle approach, and we're just launching this tool, which is the fascia hydrator, which has that same kind of raised tissue, and it's got low frequency vibration, 40, 70, and 90 hertz, and an oscillating frequency. And we're directing more of this new tool toward the lymphatic system, because we know now that the superficial fascia is actually very reactive to vibration. And depending upon what frequency you use, 40 hertz will kind of rip through the whole body. 70 hertz goes a little more focal toward muscle, and 90 hertz will penetrate to the bone. And what I'm fascinated with is the 40 hertz, they're talking about helping Alzheimer's related symptoms, the 70 hertz muscle strains, and the 90 hertz bone density. So I'm so excited to see where this research goes. And we have the International Fascia Research Congress coming in August, where I'll be presenting that device. And some of the researchers that are talking about vibration and frequency will be there, sort of showcasing this new progressive research and how fascia is a vibration sensitive system that can help stabilize not just your muscles and bones, but your nerves, blood vessels, and organs.
So we have a mutual friend, Gil Headley, who I've interviewed on this show. Tell us how Gil has, for 30 years, shown people human dissection. And both you and he and the other experts that you interact with are very aware of this incredible body intelligence that we have. Tell us how Gil affected your work and your perspective.
Well, I would just say he just changed my life. I mean, I had finished a master's, and through schooling, I had met Leon Chaitow in neuromuscular therapy, and I thought, I really had all this knowledge about the body. And when I started saying, when you put your hands on somebody, there's like this vibration that's under the fatty layer. There's like a current that happens, and I just kept asking people about it. And a friend of mine said, do you know Gil Hadley? And I was like, I don't. He said he does a layer by layer dissection course. And I'm like, layer by layer what? And he said, fascia. And I'm like, what? And he said, yeah. I was like, that sounds crazy. So I called him, and he told me about his research, his dissections. And I went to take his course. I think it was around 2004. And first of all, we all held hands, and he read poetry around a form, which I was like, what is happening? And I had done dissections before, but we got to the bodies after the medical students did. So, all the superficial fascia was chucked in the bucket. So you had this idea of a body that I had really held as real. And when we removed the skin and we were sitting there looking at this superficial fascia, I just didn't understand what I was seeing. And Gil said to me, what do you think of that? And I was like, I don't even know what I'm seeing. And he said, well, that's the system. That's the frequency. That's the system that's channeling vibration and frequency through your body. And I turned to him and I said, did you just call it a system? And he said, yeah. And I go, well, it's not a system. And he goes, why isn't it a system? I said, because it's an inert packing material with non-living matter that stabilizes structures.
And you're looking at it when it's dead.
Yes. And he looked at me and he goes, why would you have a non-living matter in your body? And I was like, I don't know, because my anatomy professor said that. And he's like, that's not true. It's a living structure. It's the cells of fascia fibroblasts are constantly tinkering with the matrix and changing it. It's in a constant state of change. And I was like, what? And then when we removed the superficial fascia as a bag and set it aside the body, I literally went back to NYU and said, I would like my money back. This is a fraud, what I've just wasted all my time doing. There's this whole system in the body that nobody's described. And now today, we're really seeing fascia as not just a connective tissue, because fascia is everywhere. So of course it connects everything. It is everywhere. And it's the substance that's holding our form. It's the biological fabric that puts us together. Jaap van der Wal calls it our inner tissues. And I like that. Okay, that makes sense to my brain now. But now in the last 2 decades, we can actually look at fascia and say it's a sensory organ. It has 250 million sensory nerves living in it that is actually informing our nervous system on what's going on in the periphery. But it is also a system. It's a system of stability. It's a system of communication. It's a system that stabilizes, supports, and protects everything, much like the nervous system. So not only does the central nervous system and peripheral nervous system are a power couple, I would say that the whole nervous system and your fascial system are another power couple. And the things that those are really supporting, protecting, and stabilizing is the most vital system of your body, which is your immune system, right? If our immune system's not functioning well, you're going to die, right? So the pre-lymphatic channels that are driving the fluids from fascia into lymph can get very bogged down. And this is where metastasis occurs. This is where immune regulation goes haywire. This is why so many people have immune dysregulation in our day and age, because there are so many glyphosates in the foods we're eating. There's chemicals everywhere that have never been here before. And I really think that in some ways they're poisoning, especially in America. We know that there's chemicals in our foods that that are banned in other countries. Why aren't they banned here? For 3 reasons. It's cheaper, it has life shelf, and it sells more because it tastes better. Well, this is killing us. So we as Americans and anywhere around the world need to wake up to the fact that our bodies are suffering because of the environment we're living in today.
Yes, I work with people all over the world, and I have people who travel in and out of the United States, and it's crazy. You go to places that the food is fresh and clean, and like your body gets healthier. You drop the 10 pounds that you've been carrying around.
You can eat bread for the first time without getting a skin reaction.
Completely effortlessly. I love this conversation because, I'm an acupuncturist, so I know the magic of sticking a needle in the exact right point and you don't even have to put it in the area of pain. In fact, my teacher's teacher escaped mainland China during the Cultural Revolution, and he got very famous for treating 150 Taiwanese soldiers per day with just a few needles. And, that was done by connecting to this magic that is our beautiful bodies. And you're right. When you went back and said, can I have my money back? Because I feel like it's been misrepresented to me, because what we see in anatomy books, that's a dead thing. And it doesn't look anything like this magic that's going on with us each and every second of each and every day. And you don't notice this. It's like trying to describe water to somebody who's never, taken a bath.
Yeah.
It's like until you have your hands on it and you interact with it, I know you've had your hands on countless people who, they're like, how did you do that? All you did was, touch and move and connect with and communicate with. And all of a sudden that pain that I've been carrying around forever is just gone. But explaining the magic of that is an interesting process.
Well, acupuncture, though, I think of all of the practices, acupuncture has got to be one of the most profound therapy practices that I've ever experienced. When you have a really skilled acupuncturist, like my friend Janice, who is a acupuncturist in New York, and I would say she's probably one of the top 10 in New York. And she's worked on me. I remember when I went off the pill in my 30s, and then I wasn't getting my period. And then the doctors said, well, here's a pill to help you get your period. And I was like, why would I go off a pill to go get on another pill? So I went to see her, and on the 27th day, she'd put needles in particular regions. And then 3 days later, I get my period like clockwork. And after about 3 months, she said, let's just see if now your body is kicked in and if it'll do it. And boom, I was steady. So I know the power of it. And what's really incredible is Helen Langevin's work, and seeing that when you put an acupuncture needle in and the acupuncturist spins it, that the fascia winds around the needle. And in that winding, it creates a ignition of neuroelectrochemical charges against myofascial meridians, which is why if you have pain in your neck and an acupuncturist is like, let's put a couple of needles in your wrists and in your thumb, and you wake up the next day and you're like, I think my neck is better. And you think, well, that can't be. It's like, of course it can, because those are the directed myofascial meridians. And if you know exactly some precise regions to hit the body, you can really transform somebody in a session. And that is my experience of acupuncture. I would say 90% of the time I've ever done acupuncture, it's one of the most successful therapeutic techniques that I've ever done. So I'm a fan of acupuncture.
Beautiful. Thank you for that. The other thing that I've been totally enamored with is hypnosis, and how if you go into the brain and rewire the brain that way, it also has profound effects on the body. Because and it's so interesting because I go brain to body and you're going body to brain. Tell our listeners how when you change the body, you actually do change somebody's mood and their outlook on life. Tell us about that leg of the equation.
Yeah, I think that first of all, when you feel good, you think better, right?
Yes.
So, when you're in pain, the first thing people want to do is tune it out. And what I mean by that is they tune themselves out. They either drink alcohol, they wind down at night, they caffeine up in the day, they take pain relievers, and we're, again, not very source driven. We are very symptom driven in solutions in this world. So treating the body, it really gives the nervous system a reset, because most of our trauma, our stress, our tension is actually existing in the body. And the way that our cells communicate, cells are talking, cells are like a billion mini yous floating around a matrix. And integrin to integrin, these cells are speaking to one another. So if the environment that cells are living in is not stable, cells stop communicating. And it's not one cell, it's many cells. And again, this is what can cause apoptosis, cell death. It's what increases, your aging process. It makes you age faster. I'm in my mid 50s now. And so, it's coming. I'm in the menopausal era,
Well, you look fabulous.
Thank you. Thank you. But that's it. You try to take care of yourself. And I always feel like I'm a poster child for daily self-care, whereas most of my friends are shot up with Botox or lip injections and face injections and augmentations up the wazoo. I see women in the gym with these things in their butt. And I'm like, God, is that in them, or is that their leggings that has a pad in it that looks awful? I think to myself, why do this? Because when you things like liposuction, you're sucking the intuitive aspects of your very form out of your body. And that's a disruption to the whole system. There are other ways to help for fat absorption, and that starts in your lymph. So I think if you really want your mind to function well, you've got to get the toxins and waste out of your body. So drink consistent water, eat water-filled foods, try to eat organic foods, try to stop eating so much sugar and just refined foods. I think that we're just stuck sometimes in affordability of food. People would rather buy a box of cereal that costs $1.50 and is loaded with carcinogens and toxic chemicals than they would spend $6 on less cereal but higher quality, because they've got kids and they don't have time. And I think, well, think of something else then.
Well, also, if you spend the money on the quality food, your body gets the message that it's been fed.
Exactly. Thank you.
In a way that satisfies the brain as well. I'm just curious, what do you think of chlorella and spirulina?
I love it. I love it. I take spirulina. I can't think of the brand right now, but it's in a big blue jar. I can visualize it, but I can't think of the name of it. But I think that these are really interesting because I do think that they are very bioavailable in the gut. And I think that they help the gut and the flora in the gut. I also take a product called Zyve, and it's a pre and probiotic. And I just think that also helps with blood sugar regulation, because I think what a lot of people have is insulin dysregulation. And we wait too long between meals to eat. We're not eating, just like you said, quality food. We're not drinking enough water throughout the day. And so we are the cause of our dysregulation. We have got to stop blaming everybody else for they did that to me, or this doctor, or that person, or that car, or this and that. If you just realize that part of the human experience is accountability and responsibility for yourself, that's really the place where you have to start, is to say, I want to be in control. I don't want to be a victim to my pain points, to my body fat, to whatever. If I don't feel good, I want to work on feeling better rather than being a victim of my disease.
Working with the Hollywood A-listers that you have, I imagine a lot of them have had a lot of surgical interventions. Can you talk about some of the pitfalls? Because I've never, like all the things that women implant and and pump into their bodies and nip and tuck. It's really shocking what a woman will go through for appearance.
Beauty, I think beauty is not just skin deep. I think that beauty is inside of us all. But I think that there are fillers that do seem to work, the threading that are collagen, like some of the injectables that actually stimulate your own collagen development. I think that we're learning more and more about that. But some of the things that I've seen, I had a gal come in who had gotten a lip injection and it didn't blend. And she just had this huge welt in the side of her face. And the doctor said, well, don't worry, in like 3 or 4 months, it'll come back down. And she's like, 3 or 4 months, So she came to me and we just worked the tissue and just mobilized the tissue and massaged that tissue on the inside of her mouth and started to open up blood flow, worked on her cheeks so that it just started to dissipate. And after about 3 weeks, it really came down a lot. But, the thing that they don't tell you is some people actually have a hard time absorbing substances that you put in your body. Also, there is no clinical evidence that breast implants are safe or butt implants are safe. Zero. There is not one trackable, documented research paper that says that any type of breast augmentation is safe. Not one. And so we believe that it's fine because so many women have it. But I have worked with so many women who have histamine reactions, who suddenly have encapsulated tissues. They are suddenly losing tons and tons of weight because they suddenly trigger an autoimmune response. So I think that vanity is sort of against us. We all want to be beautiful. And I think the first thing is knowing that you are beautiful. And
absolutely.
So it really starts with us and how we feel about ourselves. And if you don't feel beautiful in your skin, you have probably been hanging out with the wrong people who are not affirming how you look. And with this new product that we have, this fascia hydrator that's coming out in the getting started section, I very blatantly say, before you start using this, I want you to look in the mirror. And I want you to get very descriptive on what you see. Do you see blue eyes? Do you see edges? No emotions. I don't want you to put any emotions to it, no judgment. Just specifically, what do you see? Do you see wrinkles? Do you see crimps? Do you see curves? Just write down what you see and celebrate your body for a minute. And then think about all the good things that you're seeing and let's enhance that. Instead of feeling like you're something that has to be fixed or changed or transformed, you really just want to support the ever-changing aspects of our body. Because here's a scientific fact. This is a scientific 100% proven fact. 100% of the people you know will die someday, including yourself. Aging, it's going to happen. I don't care. Any of these people who say they're going to biohack you and you're going to live till you're 150, one way or other, you're still going to age. They might be able to slow it down. They may be able to change the progress of it, but you're never going to actually stop your body from aging. And I think that while that may happen someday in the future because of AlphaFold and the protein, research that's coming out and how to unfold proteins, we are going to discover more and more. But I think there's something about embracing the fact that you're a spirit occupying a body and utilizing a mind to have a human experience. And we should revel in that.
And we look at the people that are just such motivators as they get older. It's not that they don't have any wrinkles, that they look perfect. It's because they've got a sparkle in their eye. They've got things that they're excited about. They've got a community of people that they're inspiring and inspired by.
We're the happiest people.
It's the internal thing that is so inspiring to others, not the fact that there's no wrinkles on their skin.
That's right. That's right. And I think wrinkles are sort of, they're the timelines of your body. They're what express the fact that you've gone through life. And, the smile lines, it's because I've smiled a lot. So I'm going to have those lines, And I think I think we should just embrace the fact that we get to be a human for such a short period of time. And life is very short and fleeting. So we should embrace it. And again, if you don't feel good in your body, I would introspect on the why. Did somebody tell you that? Did somebody put something in your mind? Like my dad would call me a heifer when I was a kid. Mean, and fugly and things like that. People would,
no.
And so you have a complex when you're younger. And then somewhere along the line, somebody said, you're a very pretty girl. And I was like, I am a pretty girl, and so you just suddenly go, maybe the story is wrong. So we can always change the story without having to augment our bodies. If we just change the narrative, I think we feel better because we're changing our mind about our body state, and in that our body will change.
If you have the blinders on the inside, it doesn't matter how much you change the outside.
That's right. That's it. Beautifully said.
And to your thing about breast augmentation, or anytime where you're cutting through the body, you're cutting through all that incredible connective tissue and fascia, which again, you're not seeing in the anatomy book, so you don't even know that it's there. You're cutting through the meridians, and then you're, sewing it all up, which leaves a certain amount of scar tissue, which is like, kind of leaving a dam in the river.
Yeah, like a sediment in the river, and that's the other thing about scars. Dr. J.C. Gumberto, he has a 12 conference collection that people can go to meltmethod.com and find out more about. And one of the lectures is on scars. And what's incredible, he is a surgeon. He's done 10,000 or 50,000 surgeries. The scar can look perfect on the outside. But on the inside, the structures are forever changed. They will never come back to exactly what they were, no matter how good the surgery, laparoscopic or otherwise. And the deeper the surgical procedure, the wider the damage of scarring occurs. So we've worked on people who are living who suddenly had digestive problems.
Mm-hmm.
And I said to the guy I was working on, did you have your gallbladder removed? And he's like, yeah. And I was like, let's try to mobilize the scar tissue, because maybe you have scar tissue that's affected your large intestines. 2 sessions later, he's like, I took the biggest poop of my life. I can't even believe it. And so we've even in dissection seen coils of fascia wound around structures post some sort of a visceral removal. It could have been, like a colorectal surgery or a small intestine surgery, or the appendix or gallbladder is removed. But when you in dissections, in a gallbladder surgery, it's a tiny scar, and then you remove the superficial fascia, and what was this big on the skin is this big in the superficial fascia, this big in the deep fascia. And when you get into the viscera, the scar tissue is everywhere. So I've worked on women who have had a cesarean who come in 10 years later with severe back pain. And the doctors are like, oh, you have a bulging disc. That must be the problem. And I'm like, wait a minute. If I did an MRI to 5,000 people, I probably find 4,500 people with a bulging disc.
Exactly.
So I said, clothes are on. I was like, did you have a C-section? And she was like, I had 3 C-sections. I said, lie down. Let's go ahead and check that. And just a little bit of traction on the C-section scar pulled her back tissue. You could feel it in the deep fascia on the posterior side of her body. So as we mobilize the tissue around the scar, lift it away so that it doesn't adhere, 3 weeks later, her back pain is gone. And she's like, that's a miracle. I said, it's not a miracle. It's fascia getting pulled at its end. You release it and suddenly you get restoration of motion.
So your process can address scar tissue.
Oh, yeah. My mother right now has a scar this big, and we're just now starting to really work on the scar that had a pucker in it that went about maybe a 1/4 inch into her skin, and it's almost flat already.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you could even, that's what you're describing as a keloid.
Yeah, very keloided, very thick. She also had gotten a little cellulitis, a little bacterial infection at the bottom of it. There was like a little seep in the repair, and we kind of caught that, antibiotics, and now we're just, but cellulitis will make tissue very adhered, very thick, like a bubble. So now we're really working to reabsorb that. But you can change scars. And I think the thing you have to remember is if you have a scar, the sooner you work on a scar, the less adhesions you create. But no matter how old your scar is, you should never forget that you had a stitch or a scar, and you should always massage a scar. You should always work on it, pull it, cause I call it skin folding, where you kind of roll the skin or twist or crimp the skin so that the adhesions don't accumulate, because it is like sediment, and wherever sediment is, more sediment will link to it.
Is castor oil helpful for that massage
I think
process?
so. Yes, definitely. I
Yeah,
love
the
castor oil. Absolutely.
old Edgar Casey remedy that seems to be good for just
It
about everything.
really works, especially for very big keloided scars. Yeah.
Wow. What are some other things? Because I'm sure you have a whole walk-in closet full of miracle stories. But what are some of the craziest cases that came to you? I mean, what you just described in terms of the woman with low back pain, you know, surgeons of course are going to say, you know, cut her open, do surgery, which, you know, in my personal opinion, and the doctors that I've known and the surgical rounds that I've been on, the people that are the last to get surgery are usually surgeons.
Yes. Well, surgeons are salesmen. They are selling you their surgeries. They make like $80,000, $90,000 when you do a surgery. Some are even more, right? The surgery my mom had, I think it was like $135,000 hip
Dang.
replacement, right? You know what I mean? So
I mean,
there's
it's great when you need it, but if there's conservative care you can do before you go under the knife, it seems to me they're not in a rush when their back is hurting to go under the knife.
Yes. Well, and that's it. Is I just think that we don't know, or we need to be reminded maybe that the body is actually designed to heal itself.
Mm-hmm.
If we just get out of the way
Mm-hmm.
and address the problems that are actually causal rather than symptoms, you can get yourself out of pain. So I've had people who came into me. I remember this woman, Rita. When she first came into a melt class, she was with a walker, and she said, "Somebody said you can get rid of my neuropathy." And I said, "Well, I don't know, but come on in. You have to get down on the floor." And she goes, "I don't get down." She was German. She goes, "I don't get down on the floor." And I was like, "Well, you can just sit in the chair and you can watch." And about halfway through the class, you see her sliding off the chair and getting on the floor. And she got up off the floor and she looked at me and she said, "I'll be back." And she came 3 times a week, from starting with a walker to 2 canes to 1 cane. And then she became my private client. And we treated what was really going on in her lumbar spine, stabilized her hip, gave her a protocol with the foot treatment, lower body and upper body techniques. And 6 weeks later, she's coming in with 1 cane and leaving and forgetting it. And then going back to her doctor to get another test because her neuropathy was so much better. And he said, "You don't have neuropathy."
Nice.
And she's like, "Is that even possible? Because you've been giving me this medication for a long time. Do I still need to take that medication?" He goes, "Why don't we back off the medication and let's see if the neuropathic changes have held?" So I've seen those kind of radical circumstances. I've seen people limp in and walk out of my office. Even my mom, she called me one time and said she was going to get carpal tunnel surgery. And I was like, "You don't have carpal tunnel syndrome." And she says, "Oh no, the doctor said I do." And so we waited until the day of the surgery because he wouldn't call me back. And I'm standing there with my mother saying, "Why are you doing carpal tunnel surgery on my mom?" And he said, "Because she has carpal tunnel." And I said, "She has arthritis. She has trouble with end range, but she's not got numbness or tingling or any of that." And his exact words were, "Well, someday it will turn into that." And I go, "Oh, well, why don't we just cut her arm off? Because then she'll never have any arm problems. And as long as you're there, let's cut off all of her limbs. That way, no, we won't have any problems with any of her limbs." He goes, "That's it. We're not doing the surgery." And he walked out of the room. I pulled the IV out of my mom's arm and we left, So
Oh my
those
goodness.
are the moments where I said to my mom, "Mom, the only time you get to have a surgery is if it's an emergency and something's broken, okay? Then you can have a surgery. Otherwise, you can call me and I'll fix the problem so that you don't have to have a surgery." And she never had that surgery and her hands don't get numb and she doesn't have any of those problems. And she's 84 now. That was when she was 70, So these are things I think we all just need to awaken to, realizing that fascia actually is a healing system. The cells of fascia, fibroblasts, can morph into anything. Myofibroblasts to heal your muscles, osteoblasts to heal your bones, right? So
So they're
fascia,
like stem cells.
they are like stem cells in a sense. Yeah, they are reacting and changing and transforming to become whatever they need to redesign the matrix to maintain stability. And the thing that is the blessing and curse of our nervous system is that our nervous system is actually a compensating machine. And that's the problem that people have, is that they ignore the symptoms and the body compensates to deal with it. And so the symptom kind of subsides. And then it kind of comes back a little more and they pop a couple of pills and it subsides. But all the while, the nervous system is adopting compensating patterns and pathways to move you. And it's just a matter of time where the nervous system cannot compensate for one more minute. And it's just time over tension overload. And now you really have a problem. So, and that's what I call sudden chronic pain, where it comes on like an acute trauma, but all you did was bend over to pick up a pencil, or you did the same down dog you've done 8,000 times, but this time your hamstring tweaked and you're saying, oh, it was the down dog that did it. And I'm like, maybe it's because you sit at your desk all day long and then you take a yoga class and your tissue's not ready for a yoga class. So why not enhance the fluid perfusion and the stability potential of fascia before it gets cellularly dehydrated, before you have these rivers of compensations, before the meridians get broken down. And then that way you can keep doing all the things you love to do long into your 80s, 90s, and beyond, and feel good while you do it. That seems like a recipe for better health.
Is there a good scientific study that kind of can communicate to people who are not familiar with this truth about this connective tissue in our body that is mind-blowing?
I think that if you go to the Fascia Research Congress, or I think it's called frscongress.org, frscongress.org, and click on the research, and you will find hundreds of research papers. I think when people say, where is your clinical evidence or where is your scientific evidence? I'm like, have you read any of the research? We have research for melt. Melt has been used in clinical research and proven effective, but in the factor of fascia, there are so many research papers. And now there's research papers that are coming out. If anybody's interested, August 10th to the 14th, the Fascia Research Congress is there. I'm doing a pre-con, a 3-hour pre-con. And there are dozens and dozens of papers that are going to be talked about in the body of the conference. And they're now linking fascia to the estrogen dysregulation that women have, not just fibrotic diseases, but depression, emotional dysregulation. There's a host of new research that's coming out. So if you want to be on the cutting edge of well-being, I would say join us for the Fascia Research Congress and listen to some of this research, because it will blow your mind that more people don't know about it. I mean, my first book came out in 2013. And I got on all that national TV and I thought, this is going to expose it to so many people. And it did. But we're still at the beginning of where this fascial research is. And because of atomic force microscopy, because of the high-powered microscopes that we have and all of the fMRIs and these new ways to look at fascia, we're going to expose so much in the next decade. And I'm telling you, fascia harnesses the possession of healing potential. So learn more about fascia, because if you want to heal, you should know about your fascial system. It is playing a leading role in your neurological, emotional, physiological, psychological, and chemical regulation.
Fantastic. Love it. And on your website, how do people get started in, diving into the tools that you offer? What's available for people that are just getting started?
Yeah, so on meltmethod.com, you can find out about our starter kit, which basically has the hand and foot therapy kit and the soft roller. And we have a getting started section on the app. I have a streaming platform. There's over 800 different videos in the categories of pain, performance, and lifestyle. So if you have a knee pain problem, you can go to the knee collection. If you have a back pain problem, you can go to the back pain collection. There's not one melt map for anything. What we teach people how to do is to go through a succession of techniques to build strength, stability, and hydration in fascia to eliminate pain and to improve performance and also decrease the risk of injury. So the best place to start is the Getting Started section. And when you buy the products, there's a QR code that sets you up with the foundation of the method. And I teach a live class on the platform every week. Many of our instructors are there. And you can also go to meltmethod.com and click on instructors. And you might find that there's an instructor right around the corner where you can take live classes and experience some real hands-on help with your practice.
Sue, I'm blown away with all you've accomplished in your decades of doing this and how many tools you've made available to other people. Thank you so much for being here on Next Level Healing. Really appreciate it.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
And folks, leave us a comment, subscribe, and we will see you on the next episode of Next Level Healing.
This podcast is intended for the purpose of providing information and education. It does not provide advice and is not meant to be used for any self-diagnosis or the replacement of any kind of licensed professional. The creators and individuals appearing here do not endorse any specific tests, positions, medications, products, or procedures. The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are of the speakers and do not necessarily reflect the views or positions of any entities they represent.